I guess what I can infer from what you were just saying is actually modern days, obviously there are part of the reasons because how our brain works, so we have all the thoughts appearing all the time, but also modern day time people tend to do more multitasking. Perhaps, in my opinion, is because we're anxious about missing out. If we are not doing multiple things at one time, we're afraid that we're wasting our life. At least it's to myself, right? When I'm going outside for a run or a walk, I will listen to a podcast because I felt like
you want to be productive.
Correct. I want to be productive.
Oh, I was like that, exactly the same. Yeah.
Yep. So in the sense that in what is, I understand being mindfulness is to be very present of what you are doing at the moment and just concentrate on that. So one hand is training your brain and your focus, attention to do that one thing.
Yeah.
Do you think what is a good thing about that? Because multitasking, we know we can be somewhat productive.
Yeah.
But for mindfulness, what do you think the fundamental, let's say, benefits versus multitasking?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things within. I'm not an expert. I've only probably had about 500 hours of actual practice. There are people who've done thousands of hours. They're on a complete different level to you, but I don't want to sound like a deflating everyone's sort of motivation from going practice mindfulness. It is not a magic bullet. I still, in my daily grind of getting on with my daily life, I actually have many moments where I get very, very angry, very unhappy, annoyed about silly things. But I think now you get a little bit, you almost like you have a choice. In moments of very extreme anger, it's like you're submerged underwater and you're fighting, you're angry, you're struggling. And then with mindfulness, you get this 1 second coming out of the anger. You're where your head is above the water. You think, I was really, really angry. And next second, you're back in there again. So the more you practice it, the more you're able to see, I'm getting ridiculously angry. I'm getting very angry. But it's almost like you have to constantly practice. It's not when you have an easy day, happy, I'm going to do some meditation. It feels amazing. I'm very peaceful. I feel it's more on these of course, these are great practices, but I feel like it's even more prominent in times where it's so difficult. When you realize that you've been really angry, I wouldn't say you have a choice to say, I'm going to choose not to be angry, because you can't. There's just naturally, it's got a conditioned behavior. But now you have probably, let's say you were going to get angry for 1 hour. Now it's probably 30 minutes. Next time it's 10 minutes. And then, second is gone. And I think that's the practice where it really comes in. I mean, that's applicable for a lot of things in life. I mean, it's a difficult practice, but certainly worthwhile for me. I think it worked for me.
So when you were just saying that, I realized the interesting thing about being aware, right? So mindfulness is all about you being in the present moment, but actually being aware, meaning that you cannot immerse yourself in the present moment. You need to almost take a step back from the present moment and be aware that your emotion, for example, you were feeling angry. If you were immersed in your anger, in that moment of emotion, you will just be, immersed inside without aware that. In being able to be aware of that, you need to get out of that situation almost. So do you think that's something, I just realized that, is there something almost, I wouldn't say contradictory to each other, but it's not something that, almost like the moment you're aware, you're not in the moment.
It's, I would say a lot of, Buddhism practice is contradictory. I think just on your point, there's a really interesting book by a guy called, I can't remember his name now, but is it why Buddhism is true? If a dog, he is chasing after, let's say, something, the dog's in it.
Yeah.
He or she isn't aware they're doing it. They're just following their senses. They're totally immersed in it. They're very in the moment. They're right there and then. Now, with humans, I think the what's the quote? The curse of consciousness is to know your own mortality.
Oh yeah.
Who said that?
Actually, Nietzsche, or I don't.
Possibly.
I don't remember.
But it's these group of people. Yeah.
It's those
Yeah.
very intellectual.
Yeah.
Philosopher.
And I think with that kind of understanding, is you understand your own mortality. So whatever you do is to prevent that, almost prevent that from happening. I guess that's where the anxiety comes in. So to be fully immersed in something, it's a difficult question. Because you want to be in the moment.
Yeah.
You want to absolutely be in the moment. But also you want to be aware of what you're doing, because this active reflection is how you get better at something. Let's say we're practicing a skill. Let's say you practice tennis these days, aren't you? You're learning.
No. Well, before, yeah.
Yeah. You were learning tennis, and I think there is the act of totally immersed in the practice itself. But of course, there are moments where you reflect. You think, that wasn't very good. That wasn't, brilliant enough. It's almost like you want to reach a state where you're constantly doing deliberate practice, mindful practice, and then you reach a state where you mindlessly, the body itself takes over. So you almost observe yourself carrying out the action. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but it's like when you're watching a movie, you get sucked into the movie, you get sucked into the storyline, and you really enjoy it. But you can also really enjoy it whilst sitting back and say, I'm watching a movie at the moment. This is a brilliant movie. I think it's a different kind of enjoyment, immersive experience that you get.
Yeah.
And what it allows you to do is it gives you a choice. You now have a choice. Next second, I can choose just to dive into the storyline, whatever the movie is storytelling. I mean, let's think about boredom. Boredom is basically you're aware of you're aware more of yourself than the story itself. So that in itself is also, the immersive and non-immersive experience. Yeah. So I guess that, it gives you a choice to say, I want to be continually immersed in this storyline, or I now want to have a choice and not be immersed in it.
Yeah, I guess it's also, when you say we have a choice to do that, it's almost like we have the control.
It was like at the very first 10 day I had, it did feel like I almost had a superpower. It was very strange because there were moments where I was straight back at work the next day. It was some antagonizing experience. I hated it, but I was kind of like, I got really, really mad about this condition. I was just really mad because something my colleague said, and I thought, all right, let it go. Back to the present moment. Observe your breath, and it just went away. But that kind of superpower doesn't last very long because you were there for 10 days, so you're very aware of what is happening with your brain.
I guess also let's maybe it's more relevant to our everyday like meditation practice, because I think obviously it's a very brave, or let's say I think it's a brave act to be, let's say, sign up for this 10-day retreat. I wanted to do that this year, but obviously because of COVID and also because of my last minute I was thinking about the planning, etc. But fundamentally, I think I haven't gathered enough coverage yet. But for our everyday meditation practice, for example, like we build from something small, I realized when I practice, like let's say for 10-15 minutes, I feel quite good afterwards. But sometimes it can be anxiety inducing as well. It really depends on like how I was feeling at that moment. Despite most of the time I feel quite good after the practice, I still find it hard for me to do it very often. What do you think that is the reason behind it? Despite, I feel great most of the time for like 10-15 minutes. But, I should have allocated. It's like eating chocolate, right? If you like chocolate, you'll be like, oh, I wouldn't have excuse to say I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Right? So I was just trying to figure out, like, I feel like it's almost the same to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like, they want to do it, and they tried it, they liked it, but for some reason they can't